Good morning, everyone from here, US, and good evening from Pakistan. We'll start in just 1 minute. We're waiting for Seher to join, and then we'll starting in just a moment. So thank you for your patience. All right. I think we have a full panel here, and in the interest of time, we'll go ahead and start.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. I am Asim Agha. I graduated from Nisar Medical University recently in 2024, and I have done my step one and OET, and also completed my clinical rotations at Cleveland Clinic, Ohio. And currently, I am preparing for my step two CK. I am excited to welcome you all on this session on how effective email communication can change your life. This session is actually a part of the Communication Matters initiative. It's an effort to help us all improve our communication skills, skills that are so crucial for the success, especially in medical field. I would also like to take a moment to introduce Dr. Amir Lagari Bhai. He is a cardiology fellow in US and has been a very key supporter and the driving force behind this initiative. His dedication and guiding and helping us, particularly those who are on the USMLE journey, has been invaluable. We are fortunate to have him today with us to share his insights and shed some light on this initiative. So, without any further delay, uh, please join me in welcoming Dr. Amir Lagari. Amir bhai, it's over to you now.
Thank you, Asim, for starting this. So thank you everyone for joining. My name is Amir, and I'm currently a cardiology fellow here at Lehigh Valley Hospital. Um, so the purpose of this initiative is to really to get to familiarize yourself with email communication. Why I think it's important? I think it can change your life. An effective communication, and in this modern time, I think email is one of the most professional way of connecting with the faculty across the globe. So as we will dive in deep by Sarah in a moment, I would like to share like that in like I got multiple interviews just because of effective email communication. I get to know people and in my journey just because of persistent professional communication in a way that was very appropriate. I know people, a lot of people from the last 7 years of experience that an effective communication can land you in Harvard, Mayo, Methodist, any top program, you name it. Recently, I think from this year example, one of the mentee, he was able to get rotations anywhere in the hospital and across the country. And you won't believe it. I mean, and then we struggle from our end, even like finding rotations, even in like just a clinic. And that person got like all the top 10 program in the US just by one email communication. So it's very important how you would write the emails and everything. So on that line, I would highly encourage all of you guys to kind of focus more on these sessions and listen carefully and prepare your question. During the session, you can unmute yourself at the end. We have a Q&A session. If you can't speak, you can write your question in the chat box. We'll collect the question and we'll try to answer at the end of the session. This session, we'll try to keep it brief and keep it more interactive so that we can answer your questions and help you the best. Just to give the big picture, this is the first session of this CMI series. We are planning to have this monthly session every Sunday, same time, every first Sunday of the month for the next 12 months. Most of you guys have that agenda on your list for what we have. For the next month, we have I'll find the best presenter for the next session that is listed on how can you be better on social media, as like how can make yourself to be a a brand in terms of like social media communication and use that in your strengths to get the residency in the US. So without further ado, I would like to really thank Seher Friha Seher, who was kind enough to give her time to this session. So I will hand over the.
So, good morning, good evening, everyone. My name is Rashid Shafi. I have completed all USMLE exams and I have 3 months US clinical experience. I am applying for this year internal medicine match. So this session is about the communication and uh, f- effective communication is essential for both residency and being a successful resident. That's why we have invited our guest speaker, Fariha Sahar. Fariha Sahar is a social change maker based in Virginia, USA. With a degree in the criminal justice, she leads the Seher Sultana organization, transforming lives through education, healthcare, judicial rights for women, and poverty alleviation in Pakistan. As a regional assistant for the US Senate, she is honing her skills to become an aspiring attorney. She believes that effective communication drives positive change. Through the empathetic dialogue and articulate expression, we bridge gaps, foster collaborations, and ignite a brighter tomorrow. So, without further delay, let's welcome our guest, Miss Fariha.
Hi, everyone. My name is Fariha Sahar, and thank you so much, Dr. Shafi. Thank you so much, Dr. Lagari. Thank you so much, Dr. Aga. It's a pleasure to be here. And of course, it's an honor to become a part of such an important series because I understand the importance of communication, as we all do. And I'm so happy that we all are trying to get to, polish our careers and also utilize the tool of communication, I guess. So I'm just gonna start off by introducing the works that I do. I'm the regional assistant for the United States Senate, and I work for a U.S. senator. Excuse me, which means that there's always a lot of back and forth communication. I work with his state office, which is based in Virginia, but of course we communicate with all the other state offices and then also the main office, and then we also have to communicate with state legislators, and also federal employees and state and local and all the people that are involved in the process of making the lives of constituents easier. So it's very important to make sure that your communication, of course, whether it's in person or it's electronic communication, I guess it's very important to make sure that you are as clear as you can be. Sometimes, of course, you have to go back and forth to explain what you were actually thinking or what your proposal was. But then, of course, your intentions or your efforts should be to make sure that the first communication or the first part of the communication is as clear as possible. And that's where the introductory email comes into play, or that's where the main email plays a big role. So, okay, I'm gonna allow recording. So I guess the first thing that I would really want us to focus on is that there's a huge difference between conversation or communication and text messages, because I think a lot of people just think that if you're just following up with for an email, or if you're just sending off an email as a reply to the email that you had sent before, you can just send a one liner, or just be okay, or all right, or something. I guess we've all been there. I think we all have done that. So I guess that's just something that's a big difference that we need to understand, and I'm sure that most of us do. But we have been there, we have done that, so we just need to avoid doing that. From my personal experience, I would also like to share with you all that in my position, I also interview a lot of candidates for internships when they want to intern with the senator, or with the U.S. Senate in general. So we interview a lot of people, but before the step of getting an interview or qualifying for an interview or getting invited for an interview, we have this setup where the candidates have to email their resumes. So of course we utilize a lot of different softwares for, or platforms for uploading these requests and asking them to submit their resumes and their cover letters and all those things. But we also encourage them, and it's part of the requirement that where they have to submit their resumes and their cover letters over email. And I think that email tells you a lot about the candidate that you're looking at, because a simple resume or a simple cover letter cannot tell you about a particular candidate. And that's where Dr. Lagari's I think point comes into play, where a simple email can land you for can bring you opportunities that are huge, and something that you probably are dreaming of. So I just wanna, of course, one thing, emails are different than text messages. And then of course, we're gonna talk more about how to determine what your audience is, and how you need to address them, because it's very important. Sometimes we just mix up. Sometimes we would use dear for something that should have been more formal, or something more formal for where it should have been informal. So that's something that we need to be cognizant of when we're writing emails and doing that. And to start this session, if you have any questions, and I know Dr. Shafi is monitoring the chat box. So if you have any questions, if you want me to emphasize on something particular, if you just want me to take a pause, just let me know. Shafi, Dr. Shafi, please just feel free to unmute yourself and just interrupt. So, and then we're all going to talk about the purpose of emails, and just how to there are of course two types of emails that are generally practiced. That's follow-up emails, and then of course the first email, that's the big email, the intro email, the main email as a whole. So we're going to talk about that. And I had no idea before I started working in these organizations, or working for these organizations, that emails can play such a big role, and emails are so important. So I guess I'm happy to share all these things with you. And if you have any questions, again, you can put them in the chat box, or feel free to just ask them in the Q&A session. The other thing is that I think emails are also important, not just when you're working for something that is so official, working for a doctor, you're working at a hospital, but then also I think I have 2 startups that I'm working on. So of course we have a team, we have all those things, we have clients we have just partners who have different ideas, and they want to communicate. So I guess that's where we use the email communication as well. And then I also have my nonprofit organization where we use the email communication. So I guess these are different platforms, and different type of organizations, and the audience is always different. So we have to sometimes be very particular about what and how we're using this mode of communication. Right, perfect. Thank you so much. Can you all see it? Can at least 1 or 2 people just type it in the chat box and let us know if you're able to see the slides. Okay, perfect. All right, thank you. So all right, so I guess we're going to keep talking about how to form an effective email, how to communicate effectively through emails. I guess so. This is of course this is the first part where we talk about how it is so essential in today's digital world. I guess the other thing that we also want to be mindful of is that emails also create timestamps. Means that when you're sending an email out, you're also creating a timestamp. That's why it makes it so much more official. I guess anything in today's times, text messages or calls, everything has a timestamp, but emails have that official touch to them, where they do have a certain degree of professionalism, but also the freedom of you can email whenever you want to email, because you are not expecting that person to just start observing their inbox just like that, or throughout the day, right? So you can just, and that's where the degree of freedom comes in, which you do not get when it comes to text messages, because we're always using our phones, we're always messages are popping up and all those things. So we need to be but still with that, I think there's a sense of responsibility that comes in, that if Dr. Lagari has a shift from 8 to 8 p.m. to 8 a.m., I guess that's just where you and if you know that, then that's fine if you're emailing him at 12 a.m. But if you know that he only works from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., maybe I would email around 8 p.m. or 9 p.m. That's my cutoff. But then I'm not gonna email at 3 a.m. because of course that's just something that we should not be practicing. I know a lot of people do. I know I have, but we should avoid that. And then also it is important because your emails allow you, or the opportunity to share your messages in a clear and concise form, which means that you can take your time and you can structure your email, and then you can send it out with all the ideas that you might have. So it's again the comparison between text messages and the email and emails are that you can be clear, you can be concise, and then also you can add some length to it, which is expected, like most of the times. And then of course, like like that information that you're adding has to be relevant to what the email is about. And then of course we're going to talk about like mastering etiquettes and also like professional relationships and how to build that and like networking and all those things. And if Dr. Lagari would be kind enough to share my email with you all, like if you have any questions, like you can always shoot me an email, and we're gonna see how this session was effective in a way. So I will see, like if you guys want to email me, that would be great. So remind me, Dr. Shafi, to drop my email at the end. So we're gonna talk about like the audience. As I said at the beginning, that you have, of course, like it can be a coworker that you're emailing. It can be someone like Feriha Sahar today that you do know about, or like you know about me. And then it can be Dr. Lagari that you probably know through like a friend or like someone. So they're like, it's always like like a difference of tone. It's also a difference of formatting. um and a lot of different things that play an important role when you are basically like you're formatting your email. So you want to be sure that like who you're like sending an email to. Before I started working as a regional assistant, I was working at a law firm. So of course, like we had a lot of like communication back and forth with the attorneys that I was working for. So I had 11 attorneys that I was basically working for. And all those 11 attorneys, I used to, like email them case updates. And also, if you have watched Suits, and like drop it in the chat box, if you watched Suits, you probably know like what I'm talking about. So we, do that communication back and forth and sending updates and all those things. If it's a repetitive email, which means that if you're sending an email to a person that you've already sent like 11 emails, your tone is going to be different. But if you're sending an email to a person who you do not know, or like they're like the higher ups, or like whatever, your tone is going to be different. You have to like establish that what is your tone and what is something that you prefer establishing with that particular person. I think that when it comes to my coworkers or like someone that I've met in person, I have like a frank sort of like relationship with them. Maybe at the Senate, I emailing her, I'll be like, hey, like how are you and all those things, and then just like come to the business and then be like, okay, thank you or best or whatever. And we're going to talk about closing emails as well. But I guess that's where the difference basically comes in, and we want to like be sure that we're understanding the audience. So we're going to go through the pointers here. So of course, like the first thing is that if you know your audience, it helps you tailor your message in the way that you want it to be delivered. Because like for example, like I'm talking to you right now, and if you can see my like if you can see the video, you can see I use my hands a lot. And that's something that I learned when I like when I was a debater and when I was like learning how to debate. So I guess like that's like so so much easier where you're like using your words and your hands and your facial expressions and everything, and you're communicating to the person who's in front of you. Like for example, I have Dr. Lagai in front of me right now, and I can imagine like if I'm talking to him. But I guess like that's the essential thing where you need to be like you need to be cognizant of that. You don't have that liberty, you don't have that privilege where you can use your voice or your like hand movements and your facial expressions to deliver your message. So that's like the tricky part where you have to be like you need to be polite. If you have to be polite, if you have to be a little bit like assertive, then you be assertive. So that's again like you are going to like establish your tone, establish the audience, so that you will have that like understanding. And then you're like that like connects us to the part where we're talking about the recipient's level of understanding. Because sometimes you're sending an email to someone. For example, I'm applying to law schools, inshallah. So if I am sending an email to the admissions committee and I want an interview with the dean or like the assistant dean or anyone from the admissions committee, I am responsible for sharing the information that is pertinent to me, which means that I am supposed to introduce myself and let them know that like who I am, what do I do, why do I want an interview, right? If it's just like, oh hi, like this is very Hazar, I just want an interview, bye, thank you, that's not how it's going to work, right? So that's where Dr. Lagari's point comes in, where you're like sending out emails to these people who are like from particular organizations, and you're like aiming to get in contact with them or build a network with them. You need to like do a little bit of homework where like your tone is basically going to establish that. And then I guess like we're gonna go back to the previous slide, please. right. So, and then, yeah, I guess, and then topic, right? I mean, that just like brings me to the example again, and I just want to emphasize a little bit more on this, which is that, for example, if I send an email to the admissions committee, and I'm just going to keep giving you examples so that it gives you more clarity. So I guess, like, when I sent the email to the admissions committee, I introduced myself and I told them subject line. Of course, we're going to talk more about it, but I was like, they're whatever, like whoever the assistant dean is or the dean is, and then I, like said, good morning, good evening, hello, Mister, and then like these are the usual things that I use, and then like the topic that I was sticking with was my introduction, and then also the request for an appointment from them. So yeah, thank you. Dr. Lagari, you may move to the next slide. All right, so now the most important thing, right? Like, if you were to talk to me and we were to establish a relationship on social media, we would have just like sent a message and be like, hey, how are you? Or like, hey, I'm this and this and that. But when you're sending an email, it's different, because it's of course like a notification at first, and then it pops up in your inbox, and then the first thing that the recipient looks at is your subject line, which means that the more appealing your subject line is, the more chances of that email getting open. But that does also not mean that you're just gonna like type in like various things. Oh, I'm like an alien from Mars or something. No, we're not gonna do that. But we're just like, we're going to stick to the point where we have a certain idea of like for what sort of emails we can use like certain subject lines, and then for like like just like follow-ups and all those things, how can we craft them. So I think like subject line, as like the PowerPoint also states that it's the first impression, right? So that's very important, and the first impression can be sometimes the last impression, although I don't agree with that. But I guess like that's also important to understand that that's your landing mark, and then also understand the point where a lot of people receive hundreds of emails every day, right? If part of my job is that I take care of all the United States Postal Service for all the Virginians, which means that like if there are like millions and millions of Virginians, I'm going to take care of all the US based casework, which means that if they have my email, they're going to keep sending me updates from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. So that means like I get a lot of emails. I try to like filter out my emails in the way that they have been like, of course, like the subject line really matters, because I look at that and I'm like, okay, this person needs help with casework, this person needs a follow-up, this person needs to talk to me, this person just wants to complain, or this person needs assistance with something that I might not be able to help. So I think like people who are good with subject lines have more chances of getting a response from me or like a follow-up. Or if they're not, then I might like just when I'm clearing up my inbox, I might just like click on each of them and just like go into that. So they just understand that subject lines are very important. So yeah, I guess we're going to talk about like subject lines in the next slide. So I'm going to give you like the top three types of subject lines and like the examples for them. If you're like following up with someone, you want to make sure that you're mentioning that you're following up in your subject line, which means that you're going to write follow up. Of course, like F is going to be uppercase, U is going to be uppercase, and then you're going to use like, like you can either use a hyphen, or you can just use like a punctuation mark, and then you can just go forward and just be like, okay, like follow up to our previous conversation, or follow up and your name. You can always add your name as well, because it's easier for sometimes, like for example, my email address, it's like it's different, it has a different name in it, the one that I use a lot. So I guess it just becomes easier when I'm mentioning my name in the subject line, so that the person who's looking at it, they can just keep a track of it, or if it's easier for them to like just like search it up if they have to. The other thing is that if you are like, inquiring about an IT situation, for example, like if you're working for an organization, you're working for a hospital, and all the doctors go through technical problems. So if you have a problem and you want to, like contact the IT, and you already have a ticket number open and you're just following up on that, then you're just going to mention that ticket number, like follow up, and then, your ticket number, and then whatever the issue is. If you're following up on a certain event or a certain, for example, if you were following up for the CMI's session, then you would have like, the way that your subject line would have been crafted was follow up, and then like CMI session, and like, the date that you're asking about. That's like, how you create effective like follow up subject lines, where you're actually mentioning that you're following up. That gives the person who is the recipient a hint that like this person is following up, we have had a conversation before, and all those things. So yeah, so I think like that's the first part. The other thing is like if you are sending an update to someone, for example, for me, if I'm like talking about a certain issue, if we're facing a hurricane in Virginia, so I'm like sending an update about that. So I would be like, Hurricane Helene, and then like in parentheses I would be like, okay, like, excuse me, casework, or like in parentheses I would be like updates like from the news or news clips or senators remarks or anything like that. So that's something that like that's an effective way of doing it, where you're very particular, like very specific about your subject line, and you're putting the topic that's important, or the topic that you're going to talk about in your email. So and then the third one, of course, is just like if you're sending it to your coworkers, I guess like sometimes I don't ever send blank subject lines. I guess like that's just something that I do, and I think it's of course the point that we go. I just like mentioned earlier was like emails create a timestamp, and like emails are a permanent record as well. So you want to make sure that you're using some sort of like subject line, but then of course like these type of subject lines are the most used. Dr. Lagari, you can go to the next slide. All right, thank you. All right, so guys, this is also important because I think I struggled a lot with professional greetings, and then I was given like a proper like sit down conversation about this, so I understand the importance of it. And I guess like I'm happy to share all these things with you because we sometimes get confused when we are, of course, like the first part, like you're done, you've survived the subject line, your email has landed in the inbox of the recipient, and now you're just like waiting for them to open it up. So I'm going to tell you a funny story, but it remains between us. So like, when we have, we receive emails from like interns who are like potential interns, like candidates for applying the internship program. And their emails are like, the wrong salutation, I guess. For example, like Mrs. Sahar, like I'm not married, right? And if and if you're not sure about this, you don't know like if I'm married or not. Like you don't know if Dr. Lagari is or not. You don't know like if Dr. Shafi is or not, right? So you just don't know about that. So this is something that hits, like that can be a bad impression, I guess. Like that means that because you did not know that person, because you did not have an idea, you just want to be sure, you just want to be, like to be on the safer side, I guess, you would use like Mr. or Miss, and I think that's like pretty like accepted. Or you're just gonna use the title of like like Dr. Lagari or Dr. Shafi or Dr. Aga. So like all those things. So you just have to like make sure that that's the first thing, that's your salutation that you're using in a particular manner, where you're like, if you're not sure about something, then just don't do it. The other thing is like, for example, the senator that I work for, like he is a senator, right? And then they're like congressmen, but sometimes like interns or like applicants would write be congressmen, this, and that's just like, that tells you that they did not do their homework, and they don't even know like they're applying to a senator's office and not a congressman's office, because there are only 100 senators in the US, and they're like 435 like congressmen. So that's like something that you need to be like sure about when you're also like doing. I think like that's very something that I'm very petty about, I guess, because I do pay attention to such things. So I'm sure like a lot of other people who have been through more applications and emails than I have, I'm sure like they do as well. So that's the salutation part. You're always going to use the last name, which means that you're like, if you're not like particularly frank with the person, then you're going to use the last name of that person, which means that hello Dr. Lagari, or hello Dr. Shafi, or hello Dr. Aga. That's like your salutation, that you always want to make sure that you're not using the first name. And particularly in the United States, I guess. I don't know about other countries. I know Pakistan, like I didn't email a lot like when I was in Pakistan, but I guess like in the US, like people prefer that you take their last name if you're not super frank with them. So that's something that if you're already working in the US, you probably know that. If you're not and getting ready for that, that's a pro tip for you. If you do not know that person, or if you've just introduced yourself to them, use their last name, like Mr. or whatever. So I think like that's like the first part, and then the last names, and then also, yeah, I think like you can personalize it by saying like good morning Dr. Lagari, or good morning, or like good evening. And you also want to be sure, like sometimes like people confuse good morning and like good afternoon and good evening, and like certain things. I'm particular about that, so I think like I pay attention to these things. But I guess like like you also need to be cognizant of that you have to be a little bit careful when you're doing that. So and then like we use dare, I guess, like, you know, when we have been communicating over email for a long time, or if I know that person, even though if I'm not frank with them, I would use to use it. I used to use dare for my professors as well, because I think like that shows sort of a level of frankness, but also a level of respect. So I'm not just, you know, like hey or hi or hello. I guess like hello is fine, but dear is like okay as well. But you're not gonna use dear in your first email. That's something that I do not recommend. So yeah, so if we can go to the next slide, Dr. Lagari. All right. So, so you know, like when you're done with your subject line, you're done with your initial formal or informal greeting, then you're gonna start structuring your email, which means that now you're coming to business. You're talking about business, right? Because I mean, I'm sure like most of you, some of you must be thinking that, you know, like, hey, what is, I mean, all this about? Like, it's so much, it's too much, and it is too much. There are steps, and that's why we have emails. That's why we're not texting each other. But we want to make sure that like we have a well structured email, which means that you should, of course, like, you know, like be mentioning whatever the purpose of your email is, which means that, you know, like if you're just emailing for a follow up, then you're just going to start off by saying that, hey, you know, like this email is I'm writing you this email, you know, like for this percent of. Oh yeah, that's fine. So you know, like you want to make sure that you are sticking to that point and making sure that you know why you're emailing the person you're emailing to. That's something very important. And I think that also like, you know, if your email is well structured, it increases the performance in terms of the readability and like comprehension and all those things. And I think it's very important. I always make sure that I divide my paragraphs with an extra space, as it is, you know, like divided in this like photo as well, if you can see that. Sometimes people don't understand that a big blob of all your, like, you know, like your word count, if you just put it in your email, that's not something that's not readable. I guess like I just like think I lose you know, it's hard for me to focus if I have a lot of like words in the same space, or like, you know, a lot of like paragraphs muffled together. So I guess like that's something that you need to be sure about, that if you're paying attention to, that when you're writing emails, you're also like giving them enough space, and then you're dividing your paragraphs, and that's when where your writing skills come into play. And I think like that's important. Then again, you know, like if you have to use bullet points, you can use bullet points. Bullet points are sometimes appreciated, sometimes they're not. I use them if I have to. If I have a lot of things to state, I would use bullet points. If not, then I just, you know, like divide my email into like several paragraphs. And then of course, you know, like your, as I said, your opening lines, if you're following up, you're going to refer back to the communication or the meeting or the conversation that you had before with the person that you're now emailing to. And then you're just like, that's your purpose, right? So you want to be sure. So this is your structure. And I think the more you do it, the more you understand. And also you need to read more emails as well. So once you start emailing back and forth, and you're going to be receiving those email excuse me, you're going to be receiving those emails from people as well. So just pay attention to how like they are structured. But always remember that you are going to put a good space between, like single space between the paragraphs. And then you don't have to, like, usually I don't prefer like spacing between lines, but it's a matter of formatting, right? And some people take it super seriously. So yeah, we're going to do that. But if you have any questions about structuring, because I think structuring can be very subjective, but that's like the main sort of like thing. You're greeting, then you're going to put a space, and then you're going to do your first paragraph. That's your introductory paragraph, or whatever your like, you know, like main purpose of the email is. And then you're going to ask like, how are you? I hope you're doing well, and all those things, depending on the relationship that you have with the person. Even if you have a formal relationship, you still say, I hope you're doing well. I hope that this email finds you well. This is a good opening to an email. And then, like, you know, then we're going to go to the closing, and then like that's also, we're going to have space between the paragraphs. So yeah, so I guess like if you have any questions about that, put them in the chat box, and I can like go through them and like, you know, give you more tips on that. But yeah, or if you have a particular like scenario in your head where you emailed and you were not sure, I'd be happy to, you know, like talk more about that too. So Dr. Lagari. All right, so now we have to, you know, like, I mean, coming back to the point where like you have to be concise, and you have to be, you know, like you have to maintain your like, you know, just make sure that you're making a point in your email. You're not just sending out an email without a point, and you're not using a lot of words at the same time, because you can lose clarity, and that's just, like something that is not recommended. But then also, like, like sometimes people use like jargons, or they have like, like they don't proofread their emails, and we're going to talk about proofreading emails as well. But yeah, so I guess, like, also the fact that we talked about timing as well. So yeah, you usually like send emails during business hours, and that's, like something that is recommended. So yeah, I get the next slide, please. All right, so as we talked, your email, of course, is going to have a point. It's either going to be a follow-up, or you're just going to ask for assistance with something, or you're going to give an update. So you just need to reiterate that point, like before your signature and your closing remarks or anything. You're gonna like, put a line where like, I hope to hear back from you. I look forward to hearing from you. I am looking forward to hearing from you. I am looking forward to meeting with you. So you're gonna make sure that you are like, putting that as well. But that is, like something that is some, like important, because then that's your closing of the email, and that just like reiterates the point that you've like mentioned in your previous paragraphs. So I guess, like your direct language, and then all that you're directing them to the next steps is very important. And then of course, like if there's a deadline, then you mention the deadline. That, for example, if I'm assigning something to my interns, or like if I'm sending it something to my co-workers, I make sure that I let them know, hey, this is the deadline, and I want it by the end of the day, or like, by the end of business. And that's something that I make sure that I put in. So yeah, so that's something. And then yeah, so I think you can, there's a question and I'm just going to answer it right now. You can send emails over the weekend. It also, again, it depends on the sort of email you're sending. If you're just sending emails like me to an admissions committee of a law school, you can do it over the weekend. If you're sending an email to your like, like boss, or like, your higher ups, I would recommend waiting until like Monday. But I guess like some people don't mind receiving emails on the weekend, because then they can just like come back and do it. But if you're working in a hospital and you have a team, and you know that all the people like that you're working with, they work from Monday through Friday, I would, like probably email like during the week. But if it's someone that you don't know what their work schedule is like, then emailing on the weekend is fine. And I think there was a question about AI as well. AI is fine. AI is fine. It's a great tool. Like if it makes your life easier, I guess like that's fine. I use it for my business. I just say, put in my material, and I think it formats you, and it formats your email in the way that I've just told you. So I think that's the standard process of formatting emails as well. So if you, but always read it. I guess sometimes, AI can be a little bit icky. So I guess like, always read your email and make sure that your email makes that point, and it's not super polite, and then it's also not super straightforward, because you as a person understand your tone, and you understand the recipient's tone as well. So yeah, so if that answers your question, or if you have like, any other questions, feel free to put it in the chat box. So yeah, Dr. Lagari. Right. So of course, like, closing your email with professionalism is very important. You can always say that, like best, and then comma, and then like your full name, or just your first name. You can always say sincerely. You can always say, like, thank you. And these are the top three ones, like, your sincerely, or like best, or thank you. These are the ones that I practice, and I think like they're easy. And if you're sending hundreds of emails like every day, I guess like that just like, cuts your time, and it's efficient. But you always want to make sure that you are putting your name at the end of your email. That's very important, guys. Don't forget that. And then also, so yeah, so I guess, best regards and sincerity. And then also, if there is a contact information, I guess like that comes into play where your signature is. But if you don't have a signature, which we're going to talk about in a bit, but if you don't have a signature, then you are going to put your full name and your contact information after your email, like when you've mentioned and reiterated the point of your email and all of those things, and you're gonna put in your name and then the contact information. That can be you can just copy and paste your email, or you can like put in your phone number, or the position that you're working for currently, or anything like that. So that's a good way to like work around your closing emails. So yeah, if you have any questions about that, let me know. All right, so we want to talk about signatures, and like signatures are important because it provides you the idea of the person. You can have photos, you can also have like the title, you can also see the address if that person works at a physical location, or like, just like if they have their email address, phone number, anything like that, or if they have their social medias, right? So I think like there's another slide where Dr. Lagari's signature is at. Yeah. Oh, this is Dr. Heather. sorry. So like this is how you technically do your signatures. I think like the more information you have to add, the more like like things of course you can add to your signature, but it does not have to be too complex. For example, my signature is like my name Fariha Sahar and then my position, a regional assistant. Excuse me, I don't have my photo on my signature, but then I definitely have the Senate seal. So I have the United States Senate seal in my signature, and then I have my phone number, I have the office location, and then I have all those things. So I guess like any information that you might have, and you would like the recipient to know about you, I think it shows that it's coming from an authentic email. If you have a work email, of course you're gonna have a signature like Dr. Heather, or like like you're just gonna, or if it's something that you have a lot of like different things, then you're probably gonna have a signature like Dr. Zen. So I guess like if you guys have any particular questions, then I'd be happy to look at those signatures. If you just want to email me your signatures later, because this is something people choose different fonts, they choose different colors, they choose different types of signatures. So if you just want to send it off to my email, I'd be happy to look at that. So yeah, that's pretty much all. Like like if you have social media, you can just add social media or LinkedIn to your signatures as well. So yeah, of course, like your Gmail has to be very professional. If it's your personal Gmail, if it's your work Gmail, then of course like it has to be 100% professional as well. You can add your photos, like like you're not gonna add a photo with your cat or anything like that. It can be like professional. It can be a headshot, or it can be just like an official photo that you might have. So if you want to add that, and then also I do agree with the point where like people tend to reply more. It goes the same with like LinkedIn, of course, as Dr. Lagari said, that you're going to have like a session on like social media and all those things, but people do trust emails coming in from like accounts that have a photo to them. So if you can and if you are comfortable, like please do attach a photo to your account as well. So yeah. All right, so you can request like receipts of your email. Like you can also like you can request receipts. For example, this is different because Gmail, I believe that Gmail does not, like a lot of like people use Gmail for their personal purposes, but then also a lot of people use Outlook for like professional purposes. So I guess like there are different things. You can also set high priority for your email. You can also set it as a high priority or like an urgent email. You can also like set up your like receipts. Like if the other person like sends you an email, I mean you send them an email and they read it, they open your email, then you can receive a receipt. So you can do that, and so that's like something that's useful. It's a useful tool, but it depends on like the intensity of the email and the purpose of the email and all those things combined. But you can absolutely do that, and there are like very easy steps of doing that. So if you want to like talk more about that, and if you want me to emphasize on that, I can do it. I'm much more comfortable using Outlook, but I guess like Dr. Lagari can like chip in, and like he can also tell us about Gmail if you have any questions about that. But yeah, so I think like that's a good thing, but it's not necessary. But it's a good tool. So Dr. Lagari, could you please go? Yeah. All right. So again, like the common sense of proofreading, right? If you've written an entire email and you've put in so much time in it, just spend 2 more minutes reading it and like proofreading it, just making sure that you have the right grammar. And Grammarly is a great tool if you're not using AI like ChatGPT or anything like that. But even if you have like your desktop Grammarly, Grammarly is a great tool. You can have it on your phone, you can have it on your computer, your laptop, and Grammarly gives you like excuse me, it highlights the parts where it thinks that your grammar was not correct or something, like, or if you need to change a spelling or something. So Grammarly is really cool, so try that. And so you can like you want to make sure that there are no spelling or grammatical errors. Sometimes we realize that there are errors, sometimes we just don't, but we want to make sure that like we're sending our best product of like the email. And then yeah, just review it and just make sure that it has a proper like like greeting, and then the closure, and then the subject line and everything. Just make sure that it's there. If you're attaching any attachments, then make sure that there are attachments. I think Gmail and Outlook are pretty good at like if you mention it in your email that hey, please look at the attachment, or please look at the attached documents, and if you have not attached your documents, it gives you a notification before as you hit the send button and it does not have that attachment. And basically like asks you to review it and just confirms with you. So yeah, I think like proofreading is the key to it. All right, so yeah, so I guess like following up, every place has a different sort of like follow up like culture. And I also want to make sure that I'm leaving time for like question and answers. So following up, of course, like like if you have like if you're sending an email to an admissions committee, or like you're sending an email to someone that is going to take a lot more time, then maybe wait for a week before like following up with them. But if it's something that's like an IT ticket, or it's something that is a question and you haven't heard from your coworker for the past like 3 days, maybe it got lost, maybe they just didn't want to respond. There can be like different things, right? So you just want to make sure that you are like following up, but you're not following up like after an hour of sending that email, because you want to be cognizant that emails are emails for a purpose, and emails are emails for a reason, right? So you need to give them a reasonable amount of time, and then also like you need to understand when and how you can follow up. Typically it's like a week, and then but also if it's a coworker, then you can like follow up before. And then yeah, just like keep it brief and polite, and just like reiterate your original message, which means that like, hey, I'm following up on this, just wanted to make sure that you received my email. If you have any questions or if you need more information, please let me know. Thank you so much. Best Faria Sahar, and my signature. That's it. That's all for following up emails, unless you have more information to add in there. All right, my favorite part. So, guys, come up with questions so that if there are any, I can just give you more clarity. Dr. Lagari, if you have any questions, Dr. Shafi, Dr. Aga, I'd be more than happy to take those questions. And if there are any questions in the chat box that I haven't answered already, please let me know.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ms. Faria. We have few questions from the chat box, and one of the question is, can we send a short video attached with an email for our introduction or message? Is it more powerful or just a simple email?
No, I don't think you. If we, I think my understanding is like we have doctors. Most of us are like doctors here. So I guess like no, like if you're sending an email, like, and if you want to attach an introductory email like as a video, unless it has been asked from you, or if like the organization wants a video, I don't think you should. Like if it's like something that you think it's easier because you're a better presenter, or you think like it's going to create a better impression, I think you should refrain yourself from doing that. But I haven't seen anyone attaching their video as an introduction in throughout my career. I don't think so. So please don't do that unless it has been asked from you.
Thank you. There is another questions that how can we ensure that our emails do not come off as too pushy or demanding?
Yeah, because so sometimes like people are like, hi, I just wanted to let you know. Hi, I just want to know. Can you please let me know? Can you please let me know? These are not the things that you do in an email. I know, like, like a lot of people do that, and then like your formatting is off and all those things, and then you're like, oh, I just wanted to know this, and could you please tell me like by this day, and then you're just like emailing again and again. That comes off as being pushy. So that's where like you want to make sure that you're following up in an adequate amount of time. You're giving the person like who you're sending the email to like enough time to respond. So I think sending too many emails at the same time, and not like understanding and not realizing that you need to give some time to that person to respond back, I guess like that's just something that comes off as being pushy. And then also like the content of your email is can also like relay the pushiness. So I guess like the way the excuse me, the most efficient way of following up with someone when you're sent an email and you haven't heard back is just like, hi, I just wanted to follow up on my email from this day. I just wanted to make sure that you received it. I usually respond to the email chain, because if I send an email on October 1st, I will just respond to that email and make sure that the recipient is added to that email as well. And I won't change the subject line. I'm not going to change the subject line, because if I'm responding to the original email, I'm not going to change the subject line. I'm just going to send that email. So I guess, like that's where your tone of not being so pushy can help you, or maybe, like that's how you would do it.
So thank you. There is another question, and it says that, is it necessary to write our name at the end of a replying email?
Yes. So if, see, again, this is important, because if you're sending an email to me, you don't know me, you have business to do with me, then you have to, like just make sure that you're like, best, and then comma, and then just your name, like Dr. Asim Agha. So you can just, like do that. And even then, like you don't have to mention like doctor, like you can just say Asim Agha, or you can just say Asim. So just take like 30 seconds, not even 30 seconds, like 10 seconds to close the email in that format. It is very important. Yes.
There is another question that it is suggested that attach CV or resume as it may provide information to the other persons. But there is a thought that when you attach your file to an email, especially when you are sending email to an institutional persons who has an institutional email, that when you attach your document, it will go to the spam portion of the email. So is it necessary to attach documents or to ask them for documentation if they need? What is more better?
So it depends on if you have a new Gmail account, right? Or if you have a new Outlook account, that's of course going to put your mail. There's a high probability that your emails are going to end up in the spam inbox. So that's just something that you need to know. Like that happens, right? And that's where you send your follow-up emails, and maybe that can land your email into the inbox, the main inbox. Attaching files, you only attach files, whether it's a video, whether it's your CV, whether it's your cover letter, you always attach them when it has, they're asking for it. You just like do not attach your like cover letter out of nowhere and be like, hey, my cover letter is attached. Because if you know, and again, that's where the purpose or the main point of the purpose of sending your email comes in. That you, if you're sending your email as for a job, or like for an internship, or for just like the purposes of to someone that have promised you that they're going to forward your information to someone, then it can help them if you're attaching your resume or your cover letter. That is fine. That's okay. Like you can attach your resume or cover letter. But if you just want to attach your cover letter just for the sake of introductions, I guess that's not something that's recommended. But you need to understand the context and then also the purpose of your email, and then maybe it can fit in the context and maybe it's fine. So it all depends on how and to whom and for what, like, for what reason you're sending that email.
I think it's equally important to know when not to email. Okay, if you are angry and you want to like, and especially it comes when you're a resident, especially. So as a chief, I felt I learned that thing. If you're a person who deals with the emails every day, so you want to be very limited in terms of your emails. You don't want to send like 10 emails and then those 10 emails will create 10 more emails. Each email will create 10 more emails. So it's like 40 emails every day you're getting. So really, it's very important if at a residency level, I mean, at this level, maybe most of your students and some are applying for residency, that's different. But once you're a resident and you're in a system, you would like to use that email very like carefully and where it's needed, really needed. It's not like working as a chief, I realized that when it's needed, I should do it. Otherwise, I'll just give a call to my colleagues and juniors. So that's one part. And the second part is like to describe the importance of less email is like my prior program director